What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, we got to talk about Life is Strange Double Exposure yet again. New trailer, which means new breakdown. Now, what I want to do, it's honestly a really good trailer, and I advise you, watch it for yourself, dissect it for yourself. I want to look at a couple different things that jumped out to me, just a couple isolated incidents, but, in terms of the title of this video, the thing I actually find the most interesting is the ending, and it's one line that Max says. So, what I want to do is maybe we'll just start there, because I feel, things can be disjointed. I think that's actually okay. It's not going to hurt the video. Let's listen to this line from Max.
How do I protect the Safi I have left?
How do I protect the Safi that I have left? Now, that answers a huge question that me and Willow Winefield, we actually talked about in the live stream we did on Friday. And this all kind of connects to why is she using her powers, right? That's kind of my central theme. It's something I've talked about a lot. It's something that I'm nitpicky on. I'm going to be very specific on that, when the game comes out. And I want a good reason, right? Honestly, I feel like I'm starting to be won over, and I feel like depending on how they word things, how things are arranged, I think you might be able to get me, okay? Good old Alex is going to give you a pass on this one potentially, because one thing I've stressed so much, right, is, okay, there's almost two parts to it. Number one, you're messing with time, and that is something that I don't know if it's still, has been fixed or not, because ultimately, yeah, you might not be messing with your timeline, but you are messing with a timeline, and you're using your powers. And, as I've said multiple times, she should know better. She should know what using her powers can do, especially if things start to kind of go wrong in, the real world with, a world event or whatever. She needs to be able to connect the dots and say, hey, maybe I shouldn't be able to mess with time. And then also, okay, that's kind of, again, that's a little iffy still. I think there's ways out of it that hopefully they do in the game, but that's still a little iffy. The other side of things that I have thought quite often is, and I think hopefully it's not just me, hopefully a lot of us, why would you, the actual messing with time, right? What you're trying to prevent, big deal. Because another thing you should know very well about is the Chloe thing, right? You saved a friend multiple times in Life is Strange 1, and this idea of defying fate, whether you want to believe it or not, but Chloe seemingly believes at the end of the game, right? She flat out tells Max that maybe we've been defying fate the entire time. The amount of times that Chloe died or was close to death, and Max just keeps saving and saving and saving. And it all starts when she stops Nathan from shooting her in the bathroom, right? So this idea of defying fate and having somebody live that's not supposed to live. Well, that line, one line, honestly makes me feel pretty good, because that to me fully shows and fully proves, right? It's not just a theory anymore, that the idea of this game is hopefully not about bringing Safi back to life. It's about making sure that the Safi in the other timeline is totally good. Now, you could still argue with the messing with time, and see, that's another thing that, or messing with fate, because that's something that maybe the game can kind of experiment with, right? Is it destined that Safi dies all the time? Or is it destined that she only dies some of the time? Now, it's interesting, though, because, the killer is on the loose in the other timeline. She's talking to that Safi to try to figure things out. So, theoretically, if you're, connecting the dots, you imagine that killer is going to try to kill Safi in that timeline as well. So, I almost wonder, what makes the two timelines different in the first place? I guess it's some of it is Max's decision with characters, right? We've heard that when Max makes a major decision, say with a Moses, when she goes to the other timeline, she's going to see the opposite choice play out in that timeline versus hers. But it does bring up an interesting point where it's so the death is going to happen no matter what. So what makes the timelines different in the first place? And again, that kind of still is in that playground of well, you're messing with fate. But yet again, you might not be, right? Because maybe Safi, and that's to me, that's a theme you can play around with. I actually feel really good about that. I think that's interesting, and that's something that they could really explore. Is she destined to die all the time, or is she destined to die some of the time? Because if Max prevents it in that universe, is she really messing with a lot of things? Now, it could end up getting to the same kind of predicament as Life is Strange. It's something I do worry about from time to time, because ultimately, is it going to be a situation where it's like, yeah, Safi is destined to die no matter what? Now, you can catch the killer, but you can never prevent the actual murder. And maybe that happens. Maybe it doesn't, but maybe it does. And that's kind of the same as Life is Strange 1, in a sense, right? Because then she's going to have to choose, all right, well, I'm going to defy fate, and I'm going to keep Safi alive in this timeline, even though she's destined to die in that one, too. I've already lost my Safi, but then this other Safi, I'm not going to lose this time, right? And that line, but it is a good line. It's a very good line, very powerful, and very interesting, okay? So that's one thing I really wanted to focus on. There was, I guess, really only one other thing, and it's, well, maybe two. The impossible factor of the murder, we've heard that a couple times. It's just something I've never really focused on. I don't know if it's been like other trailers or like TikToks or whatever they've done, but this trailer emphasizes a couple things, right? I think it emphasizes that final line, but it also emphasizes the impossibility of it all, where it's like there's no murder weapon. Max saw Safi just a few seconds before she died. She was talking on the phone. They're not even ruling out, and I don't want to say certain words for YouTube, they're not ruling out self-elimination, let's say, right? So it's like it's a murder that really makes no sense, and Max is the only one that can figure it out, right? So that's one interesting thing. And it actually kind of got me thinking, because I know, in terms of comics and like other characters that have powers and whatnot, I wonder if they would go there, because it's sounding from that angle, right? You get pitched in this trailer, and you get pitched in general, and even like when you're going through the game, it's impossible. And I mean, okay, most times in like a detective show, I used to watch Castle, so in all these shows, right, things are impossible until they're not, right? You just have to kind of put the dots together or whatever, and you figure it out. But what about a game that has superpowers as a factor, an aspect of the game? When something feels impossible and you have characters with like otherworldly abilities, could it be that that's why it's impossible, right? Is that there's somebody else out there like Max, and they are the killer? Because if they're the killer, it makes sense why it's impossible, because they have something kind of unnatural about them that makes it capable of happening, right? Much like Max. So I was thinking that, where I wonder where it's just going to be like an average Caledon University, attending student, or if it's going to be somebody with powers. And that I don't know how I'd feel about that, because I don't know if I need like superpower on superpower, like reverses. I don't know if I need that, but that was one thing. And the only other thing I kind of wanted to talk about was, so they actually mentioned, I don't know if this is the first time we've seen this or not. You guys will have to let me know, because some of you are even more educated than I am in this stuff. So they say that this is very similar to a case 2 years ago. So there was actually somebody else at Caledon that was eliminated 2 years ago, and I believe they talked about self-elimination in that newspaper clipping. So that person, at least to the report, took themselves out. Although, because it's so similar, because it's such a mystery what happened to them, and then also what happened to Safi, because they're both, I believe, the same major, like they're pretty closely related to each other in that way. They connect to each other, right? So if one took out Safi, it's very possible that same person took out the earlier person. And I don't know, I don't really have too much more to say about that, other than I guess what I just said. But I don't know, is that the first time we've heard that? Because I feel like up until this point, it's only been a murder mystery of Safi. Now it's, it's still that. You know what I mean? But you get added context where it's like, well, this actually happened a few years ago. Very similar situation, similar even kind of person, and similar like outcome, right? They couldn't find anything. They just ruled it, the certain word, the S word, right? And they just moved on with their lives. So I'm excited. I'm really excited. And I guess the final thing to say, we've talked so much over the last couple of weeks that they're really emphasizing the murder mystery. We've talked about the interview. We've done live streams on it. That's a big part of it. And I feel like the first half of this game is going to be very detective story. And then the second half would be more of like the supernatural stuff, which is kind of what they've said and kind of just like the what I've taken in, what I think is actually going to happen. I mean, this trailer is just full on. Like, it's literally a true crime trailer, which I think is really, really neat that they even did it. But, it seems like that's where their priorities are. So I just want to throw that out there. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.